Meanwhile, the Supreme Court gave Trump a stinging defeat last week with its decision to preserve DACA, an Obama-era program he tried to kill. But today, victory for Trump. The justices refusing to take up a case challenging the 25% tariffs he slapped on steel imports. Steel importers wanted the high court to rule that unconstitutional, but the court let the president's power to impose such tariffs stand. And that is about all the Supreme Court announced today. A big surprise with 14 rulings still to come down this term and only about 2 more weeks to go. Our court watcher Paul Strand joins us now. Paul, that is not a lot of time.
That is not a lot of time. And here's what usually goes on. Usually the court tries to wrap it up before the 4th of July weekend because, you know, just like most Americans, they like to go take a nice vacation. But here's the other thing. Often these guys, they teach in the summertime, summer courses, or they have speaking engagements. And these things have maybe been lined up months ago. So if they don't get off by the 4th of July, if they're not done with the term, that could, you know, kind of mess all these people up that are waiting to see them. And then they may have vacations, prepaid stuff like the rest of us might. So in other words, it can affect their pocketbooks if they don't get out. But I do understand that a few years ago, maybe more than a dozen or so, they did actually go past this 4th of July weekend thing. So maybe they're just going to have to do that. What we have to remember is that they got thrown off 2 months by the pandemic. So in other words, can they really get all these cases ruled on and decided? I don't think that they're just messing around with this. I think they may be actually trying to catch up with the 2 months they lost.
Yeah. Paul, of these 14 cases that still have yet to be ruled on, are you watching on any in particular?
Yeah, right now the one that most interests me is the Louisiana abortion case, and that involves where they passed a law in Louisiana saying that abortion doctors had to have admitting privileges to a local hospital in case something goes wrong with one of their patients. And the thing is that this court already ruled on a case that was very similar in Texas and went against Texas having that law. But now there's supposedly a majority conservative court. So we may see things change. And also they could use this as a chance to really look at Roe v. Wade. In other words, is it safe? Like, here's the question of, should doctors have admitting privileges in case something goes wrong with one of their patients? That calls into question the whole thing about how safe is abortion. So this case could have wide implications. Or they could just say, nah, just like Texas, we don't like this law, and there it goes.
For our audience at home, I think a lot of people are wondering if there are any cases of these 14 that involve religious liberty, Paul.
Yeah, a couple of them. One involves 2 Catholic schools. They both got rid of teachers who were in the who were 5th grade teachers, and the thing is that people could be covered under the civil rights laws for employment discrimination. But there's a thing called the ministerial exception. Anyone who has anything to do with the teaching of the religion who passes it on to the younger generation, like teachers would in a Catholic school, for instance, then they're covered under this thing called the ministerial exception, which is supposed to keep government out of the hiring and firing of people who pass on the faith. So that's probably what's going to cover it. Another very interesting case involves the Little Sisters of the Poor, and they've had these cases where the federal government finally said, okay, you don't have to cover abortion-causing contraceptives for your employees, but now the states have come against the federal government and said, yes, you do have to do this. And if this goes against the Little Sisters of the Poor, they would have fines that amount to about $70 to $75 million a year. So it really matters, and it's also a big religious liberty case.
All right, CBN senior Washington correspondent Paul Strand watching the courts for us. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.